Hey everybody, Josh Sheridan here with the Barely Legal Podcast. Today we have an exciting guest on. We have Lyann Goudie, who is running for judge here in the 13th Circuit. She has been an attorney in the area for a long time. She has a lot of experience and kind of knowledge of the local bar and the local bench, and she's come today to kind of talk to us about her history, her experience, her campaign for judge, and kind of what her future holds. Hey, Lyann.
Hi, how are you, Josh? Glad to be here.
I'm great. Thank you so much for coming in. So usually I start these out with kind of getting a background on people, and I know a little bit about you, but where are you from originally?
So, originally, I was actually born in Havana, Cuba in 1959.
Oh, wow.
My father was twice incarcerated by Castro because my father had been in the Cuban Air Force, was a lieutenant colonel in there. And so in 1960, my parents fled with me. I was the youngest of seven children at the time. I
Oh my
was 9 months
gosh.
old. Fled Cuba and came to Miami, and I grew up in Miami. I became a naturalized American citizen in 1970.
So Gaudi, that doesn't sound to me Hispanic or Latino or whatever the appropriate.
No, it doesn't, but
Okay.
it's my father's name, and he
Okay.
was a third generation Cuban. So
Oh my
there you
gosh.
go. His family was originally from Scotland on the father's side, and on my maternal grandmother's side, or my paternal grandmother's side, they were from Spain.
Okay. Very cool. So then, how long were you in Miami?
So I grew up in Miami. I went to a public school in Miami, Blue Lakes Elementary School, where I was the first female captain of the Blue Lakes Safety Patrol,
Oh wow.
Glades Junior High, and Southwest High. Then afterwards, I went to Miami-Dade Junior College. There were no four-year public universities in Miami at the time. And so I went to Miami-Dade Junior College because I worked and put myself through school. When I completed and got my AA degree, I went to the University of Miami. And so I'm a UM
Oh wow.
grad for both undergrad and law
Law school
school.
too.
Yeah, I'm a
Oh
big
wow.
hurricane,
Oh
bleed
wow.
orange and green.
Do you go back ever?
I do. I have five of my siblings. Both of my parents are deceased now, but I have five siblings that still live down there, and so we visit. We're very close and visit each other often.
So you're the youngest of seven.
So I am actually the seventh out of eight.
Oh wow.
So when my parents got here, the only one in our family that was actually born in the United States is my younger brother Jack.
Oh my gosh. So any other attorneys of your siblings?
No, in fact, out of the eight of us, only two of us went to college.
Oh really?
Myself and my brother Jimmy, who was third in the birth order.
Okay.
Um, and everybody else is just went into different industries and different businesses and whatever. But yeah.
So my wife is one of six, and I'm an only child, and I always marvel at the differences that kind of culminate in people, their personalities based on whether they came from a big family or from a small family. My guess, and maybe you can confirm it, is having that many siblings kind of galvanizes you and kind of makes you a little bit tougher because you are constantly battling with your siblings growing up and kind of
Yeah.
allows you to be a little bit more hard nosed in whatever it is that you're doing. Was that your experience?
Oh, totally, and especially as the seventh child. So it was very interesting. The first six are so close together. In fact, some of them are barely even a year apart.
Oh, wow.
And then there was this 6 year difference between me and the next one up from me, which is my brother Joe.
Okay.
And I used to always tease my mom that it was because when television came to play,
They had more things
everything
to do to fill their
everything
time.
slowed down a little bit, and I was an accident. She'd get up in arms, no. But yeah, no. So what happens is you learn where to pick and choose your battles, and they're all very strong personality people. So you better be tough in that crowd.
Yeah, there was a meme the other day on Facebook, and it was something to the effect of I asked my 17 brothers and sisters what our parents did before TV and social media.
Yeah, right.
You know?
Exactly.
So yeah, it's kind of changed in that regard. So did you stay in Miami after law school, or?
Yeah, so what ended up happening is after law school, I sent one resume out of law school. That was it. And it was to go to the state attorney's office in Miami. And so I went to the state attorney's office. Janet Reno was the state
What
attorney
year
at the
was that?
time. That was 1988.
Oh man, you're right in the
And
middle of Miami Vice cocaine
oh
cowboy
yeah,
territory.
oh yeah, totally. And so I went to the state attorney's office in Miami. Had a great experience there. Was there 3 years. My partner at the time was in news and had gotten a job in New York City with ABC.
Okay.
And so at the time then, I moved to New York with her
Okay.
and my son, who was 6 at the time, and took the New York bar. So I'm a member of Florida, New York, New Jersey, and Maryland.
Wow.
As far as I waved into Washington, D.C., the other
Right.
4, I was a masochist and took all those tests.
Did it ever get easier, or was it
No,
equally?
the New York bar was probably one of the most intense things I've ever been through. They tested on 26 subjects,
Oh my God.
including administrative law, which was
Yeah.
kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But anyhow, I took the bar, got a job at the Brooklyn DA's office,
Oh,
which is
wow.
actually the Kings County District Attorney's office, and had that experience, which was really intense and pretty incredible. And then she got a job here in Tampa, and so I moved to Tampa. And
Still in the news or media?
she was still in the news. I moved here to Tampa, got a job at the state attorney's office, Hillsborough County, fell in love with Tampa, and have been in Tampa for 26 years.
Wow. God, between Metro-Dade and Kings County, you picked two of the toughest areas probably, except for maybe South Chicago to prosecute.
Yeah, no, it was pretty incredible. I will tell you that. So in Brooklyn, it is like what you see on TV in that the prosecutor is the one that takes the statement.
Right.
And so it was very eye-opening to me. It was in 1992, so Brooklyn doesn't look like
it's
it
big
does
changes.
today. And you would have to do these duty periods where you'd be on 24 hours. Literally, you'd come into the office, you would stay there, and there would be a queue
Yeah.
of just law enforcement officers coming to pick you up at 6 a.m. and you'd go from precinct to precinct, interviewing defendants that had been arrested.
Right.
So you read Miranda to them. They were
Wow.
videotaped even back then.
Gosh.
And so it was a very, very interesting educational experience. I always tell everybody that my jury selection skills, to whatever extent people think I'm good at it, were really honed in Brooklyn, New York.
I would bet so. Man
Yeah,
alive.
because the Brooklyn DA's office then had only a 46% conviction rate.
Oh my gosh. Wow. So you were in New York from 92 to when?
So I was in New York actually from 91 through July of 93, but I had to take the bar.
Mm-hmm.
And so once I passed the bar and I got at the DA's office, I was there for probably about a year and a half before then I moved to Tampa.
Okay. So you were there before Giuliani.
Yeah, so before Giuliani.
Yeah,
He
okay.
came afterwards. It was during Mayor Dinkins' time.
David Dinkins. Okay. So then you moved down to Florida and right away got a job at the state attorney's office in Hillsborough.
So I got a job here in Hillsborough, and I was at the state attorney's office. I ended up being there from September of 1993 until July of 1997.
That wasn't Mark Ober yet, was it?
No, it was Harry Lee Coe.
Okay.
And I ended up being a homicide prosecutor there.
Oh, wow. You did a bunch of those, I bet.
Right.
So what made you decide to leave?
So what ended up happening was we got in a little bit of a dispute when I was there. Harry Coe, poor thing, I had some issues.
Sure.
And so we ended up parting ways
Right.
under one of those kinds
Yeah.
of scenarios. I sat and thought about what I was going to do next.
Uh-huh.
I really, 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 really believe that you have to have two equally matched advocates to make sure that the search for the truth
It's fair. Yeah.
actually is fair.
Right.
And so I really sat long and hard and thought about whether or not, I could be the same kind of zealous advocate as a defense attorney as I had been as a prosecutor.
Right.
And Diana Allen, who was a judge at the time, kind of just pushed me into it because she appointed me on a first-degree murder case. And I got in on that case, and as fate would have it, I was assigned to represent somebody who was accused of first-degree murder who absolutely, positively did not commit the crime. And so that was just a really life-altering growth experience for me.
I bet.
And started my career as a criminal defense attorney. And so I ultimately ended up over at the Julianne Holt's office, and I was the head of her homicide unit.
Oh, really?
There. Yes. And then I left there and went and I worked with Rick Escobar.
Sure.
And while I was over with Rick, Barry Cohen came and asked me to go to work with him. And so I left Rick's and I was at Barry's firm. And
was Tracy there then, or
no? Tracy had been at Barry's.
It's Judge Sheehan, which I should probably call Judge Sheehan and not Tracy.
Judge Tracy Sheehan had been at Barry's when I first got here in 1993, and had left shortly thereafter to get some trial experience.
Right.
And was a PD.
Yeah.
And I tried easily 30 either attempted murders or first-degree murders against Tracy Sheehan, and that's how we became very close friends. Yeah, so she had been gone from Barry's, and so when I went to Barry's, which was in 2002, so I was there until right before I left and decided to do my own practice.
Am I wrong? Did Barry just pass away recently?
Barry passed away on September 22nd, 2018.
Yeah, he was a giant. I 2008-ish and thereafter, I was training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and he would come in with his son and take the class, and he was a huckster. I mean, he would barely participate, but he was just, you could hear him rooms away, just,
Yes.
He kind of projected very well and was just kind of a character. But so anyway, so state attorney, then public defender, then Barry Cohen,
Then Rick,
then Barry. God,
and Barry Cohen. And while I was at Barry's office, what was really great about that was I got to work with all these fantastic lawyers that were working there at the time, as well as with him. And he let me do some civil stuff. So I actually did several what they call negligent security premises liability
like
cases.
dram shop cases, that sort of thing.
Well, what happened was in my first one, a resident of an apartment complex gets abducted, driven to a remote location, shot 3 times in the head, and left for dead.
Oh my gosh.
And so we end up suing the apartment complex because they advertised all this security, and it was all false.
Right.
It was a fraud.
Yeah.
To lure USF students and their families to feel safe at this particular apartment complex.
Did that go to trial?
So that went to trial, and we got a almost $16 million verdict on that.
Wow.
All Barry's money.
Yeah.
And the clients. And then right after that, we also represented a family of a young man who had gone into a bar, and when they came out, they didn't have adequate security, and somebody shot and killed this young man. So I've done civil cases, I've done criminal cases, but mostly what I've done is criminal prosecution and defense work.
So when did you leave Barry's office?
So I left Barry's in October of 2005 and opened my own firm up in 2006.
And was it just you, or did you have a partner or anything?
So I opened up my firm with my partner, Kim,
Okay.
who's also my life partner.
Sure.
And she had been at Wilkes & McHugh. She had been a public defender.
Okay.
Left the public defender's office, went to Wilkes & McHugh, got great experience there for 8 years. And then we've been out together since 2006. She does plaintiff's personal injury cases, focusing primarily on nursing home abuse and neglect cases.
Okay. And then you're pretty much singularly criminal defense.
And I pretty much singularly criminal defense, more high-level criminal defense, both in state and federal court.
And so that kind of brings us to present. You have put your hat in the ring to run for judge. How is it that you came to make that decision?
So, it's interesting because throughout my career, I've complained about judges.
You're in good company with me then.
I think it's the lawyers' just complaint box. And so, we have some great judges that we've been able to practice in front of. At least I have through 31 years and in multiple jurisdictions, judges that I've just thought were fabulous, and then some that I haven't thought were very fabulous. And so, basically about 5 years ago, I walked out of a courtroom, and I just felt one too many times disappointed and disillusioned that the judge had not read the material that I had provided 30 days in advance on a very serious issue. And I said to myself, okay, when I'm 60, I'm going to get on the bench and see if I can do it the way that I think it should be done, and the way some of the ones I've practiced in front of and that still are there today that do it. And so I just turned 60, and so I'm doing it.
And this is your first attempt.
This
Hopefully first and only attempt.
This is I actually put my name in the appointment list, I want to say twice. The first time was in 2017, and I think the second time was in 2019.
Okay.
But I don't check off the boxes for the appointments,
Sure.
so I'm running.
I don't know if you know Nat Kidder, but he's a friend of mine over in Pinellas County, and man, he went up on that appointment list so many times, and it just never worked its way through, and I think it was for similar reasons. But in any event, the seat that you're vying for, is it an open seat that's being vacated by somebody, or is it a new seat?
Yeah, so what I think is really important for everybody to know is that, and I don't think I've seen it before, maybe you have, but in the 26 years I've been in Tampa, I've never seen where we've had 7 open seats. And so what's happening is judges are retiring.
Right.
And one of the race I'm running in, which is called Group 13,
okay,
whatever that means to anybody, but it's Judge Espinoza's seat.
Okay.
So Jack Espinoza is retiring, and so I'm running for his seat. And there are other candidates in other races where those judges are also retiring.
And because you're the first candidate for Hillsborough County showing up on my show, I might ask you a little bit more procedurally. You were telling me before the show that you have until April to basically finalize who the candidates are, and then after that, the election's in August. Is that correct?
That's correct. So what happens is they have what's called a qualifying period.
Okay.
The qualifying period for judges begins April 20th.
Okay.
And it ends on April 24th. So whoever is going to run for judge has to file their paperwork, and it has got to be at the Division of Elections up in Tallahassee on April 24th before midnight. And so that's when you really know who's in each one of the races. Because for right now, I'm unopposed.
Right.
But that doesn't mean I'll remain unopposed, because somebody has until April 24th to get in my race.
How deep is the vetting? Is it taxes, bank records, all that kind of stuff, or is it just?
Yeah, you fill out financial disclosures, and it's similar to what people fill out when they're asking for an appointment.
Okay.
And you fill out, information such as that.
Okay. And so, hypothetically, maybe not in your group, but if there's 3 people, is there a runoff? Is there?
So what happens, and what's interesting is that, as we all know, the presidential primary in Florida is in March.
Right.
Okay. And then what happens is whoever ultimately gets the nomination from the parties and whoever else wants to run for president, their next election is in November.
Right.
Okay. This judicial election, school board people and some other county commission and other elections is actually on August 18th.
Okay.
So we're not at that point with, who's running for president, who's running for the state house or whatever. We're running August 18th. So what happens is if there's more than 2 candidates in a particular judicial race, If one of them does not get greater than 50% of the vote, they go into a runoff, which is decided in November.
Okay. Okay. But you know, I've kind of been paying attention so far. I ran into you at an event, Friends of the Joshua House.
Right.
I forget whose house that was.
It was at Tony Everett's house.
Tony. Oh my God, what a house! And then I've been seeing on social media that you've been speaking. How much time is it taking out of your week right now? It seems like you're already kind of hit the ground running.
Right. So I can tell you pretty much every candidate that's in all the races has been campaigning since they filed. And so I've been campaigning since April. What I have done is, because of the cases that come to me are pretty intense, I have not taken any new cases on since January of 2019.
Okay.
But I have my cases that have been pending.
Sure.
And so I've got 2 murder cases that are about to go to trial, one on February 3rd and the other one on March 9th.
Yo, I'll have to mark that down. I'd love to come and watch you.
And so one of them has been pending for a long time, is here in Hillsborough County. The other one has been pending also for a pretty long time. It's a 5-year-old case. It's actually a 35-year-old retrial. It's a retrial of a 35-year-old death penalty case.
Oh my God.
That one I'm doing pro bono. I was asked by the Innocence Project out of New York if I would do that case. So I'm what's called the first phase lawyer on that case. And there's a great attorney named Terry Lenneman who is the second phase lawyer on that case. Hopefully we don't get there. But that case is slated to go March 9th. So in answer, yes, the campaigning takes a lot of time, but my clients always come first. And so you pick and choose what you can do. You do as much as you can do campaigning, but it takes a little bit of a backseat to actually the preparation and getting ready for trial.
So you're doing speaking engagements a couple times during the week. You can't put up signs yet, can you?
No, can't put. There's weird ordinances,
Sure.
and I think they're different from the city to the county.
Okay.
But it's a certain number of days before the election that you can start putting up signs.
Okay. Okay. So it's going to gradually kind of escalate over time until you're probably going to be standing roadside for a couple weeks before.
Yeah. No, it's been pretty intense. And so it only increases because you start doing the walking, and then, you know, when things really start heating up, you start manning the early precinct places. They start having more judicial forums kind of things.
Right.
And that kind of stuff.
So I wanted to talk to you briefly, and I'm trying to do it in as respectful of a manner as I can to the bench in general, but I was going to start by kind of giving you my opinion of what's important for a judge based on my experience, and then ask you kind of your thoughts on that, or what you think might be important, and then, you know, how that flows through with you as far as your qualifications, etc. But my biggest thing has always been, I don't care if the judge knows the law. You have to have some modicum of a sense of humor and have a decent temperament on the bench. And I know it's got to be difficult, especially the longer that you're on there, but some of these judges that I come into contact with, and it's funny because some of them have been around forever, and I can kind of understand why you're burnt out on it. So that's first. But then there's a couple that right away on the bench, they seem miserable. And I my question was, did you not know what you were getting into? And so, I mean, you're going to, throughout your career on the bench, be in different divisions, whether it's crime or family law or circuit civil, or, you know, I guess in county it's a little bit different. But so understanding that, now you mentioned being prepared, and of course that's important. But for me, if I had to boil it down, I was thinking about this last night and preparing to kind of ask you about these things. If I had to boil it down to one thing, for me it's temperament. And I don't know how much control you have over that, but some of the stuff that we're dealing in, you know, primarily I do a lot of family law, and it's just so ugly. It's just, you know, so much of it is just very stressful. And I feel like, not that you have to lighten it. I mean, obviously you have to show respect to what's going on in these people's lives, but the temperament for me is so important. I don't know if you have thoughts on that, or.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. But to me, temperament actually also goes hand in hand with preparedness.
Right.
And so, you know, people say, because I'm known as an intense advocate. Okay, so people say, oh my gosh, so what's going to happen, if you become a judge on the bench? And I'm like, well, it's a different role in the system.
Right.
At the end of the day, I went to law school to be a lawyer.
Right.
And I've had a career of 31 years of being a lawyer, and I've loved it. And so this is a different role in a system that I believe in. And if anybody would ever think that I would leave my practice where I call my own shots, I'm my own boss, I'm on my own schedule, I pick and choose the cases I want to take, and all of that, to go and take a job, and to be a jerk about it, they've got to be crazy, or maybe I should go and get, a psych eval.
Right.
The fact of the matter is I believe that a judge has to have an appropriate temperament. And there are many examples of judges that we have on the bench that have appropriate temperaments. Because you either ran for that position or you asked for somebody to appoint you for that position. Nobody forced you to do it. So if you don't like it, then get out.
Right.
Okay? At the end of the day, it's a learning process. I couldn't agree with you more. There's going to be issues and there's going to be areas that the judge may be unfamiliar with because that hasn't been their practice. But I'm going to tell you, Josh, I learn every single day. I haven't stopped learning. I've never been the kind of person that thinks that they know everything there is to know about everything. I'm constantly researching. I actually enjoy it. I write all my own motions. So I would think, and I know myself well enough to know that if I'm on the bench, it's going to be important for me to have read the file, have read the pleadings, and listen to the lawyers, because the people that know the most about their cases are the people that a client has entrusted to come into court and speak on their behalf.
Right.
And so you've got to listen to the lawyers. And there's nothing wrong with you saying, you know what, I find this particular thing confusing. Here's where my confusion is. Can you,
Sure.
help me out with that? And I agree with you that a sense of humor is appropriate. I also believe that just a sense of compassion
Right.
has got to be there, and an understanding that there is a human being that is being affected, okay, sometimes on both sides, by what is happening here. And sometimes, frankly, there's human beings that aren't there, that are relying on their parents
For sure.
to achieve a reasonable coexistence, so that this little individual who had nothing to do with their breakup doesn't suffer the consequences of everybody being mad. And so for a judge not to understand that and have compassion for that, it shouldn't be tolerated. To me, when a judge takes a bench unprepared on a situation where somebody's liberty is at stake, it's flat out disrespectful. It's disrespectful.
Not marginally negligent.
It's
Yeah.
disrespectful to our system.
Right.
It's disrespectful and criminal. It's disrespectful to the victim and the victim's family members. It's disrespectful to the defendant. It's disrespectful to our Constitution and our system of government. So, my attitude about it is, I plan on being the kind of judge I wanted to practice in front of and that I've enjoyed practicing in front of. And I will always have an open door once the case is not pending, or if you want to bring the other side in, to voice to me a concern you have about a temperament issue that I may have. Because if I'm giving off the wrong vibe, I need to know that.
Yeah.
So that I can adjust it. I love Didi Pomponio's personality. Within the confines of my own personality, I would like to be like Didi, who always takes the bench happy, always takes the bench like she's thrilled that she became a judge and that she's happy to be there. Because, yeah, she ran for that position, she got it, and she's happy about it.
Right. Well, and another thing, and I guess this is kind of somewhat complicit with temperament, and there's this saying, and I've heard it attributed to Woody Allen and Charlie Chaplin, but it's I'd never want to be a member of a club that would have me as a member, something to that effect.
Yeah.
And I've always thought that, and I don't get this feeling from you, thankfully, but a lot of people, it's an ego thing. It's a hunger for power, a hunger for control that maybe they don't have otherwise. And that is immediately evident to me with those people because, you know, if you're doing it for the wrong reasons, then, you know, it shows right off the bat. And like I said, and I'm not just saying this because you're sitting here, I do not get that feeling from you at all. But there's a lot of people where I'm just like, what power do you not have in your life that you're, you know, trying to grab hold of up here? So that's definitely something that I see.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, one of the things, and I don't say this to be egotistical. I've been respected in my career, so
I definitely think that's part of it.
I don't need to put on a robe to get any respect because I'm a respected lawyer.
Right.
I get respect from my peers. I get respect typically from my opponents. I typically am respected by the judges I practice in front of. So I'm not doing that for that reason. While the salary is a very good salary that they pay judges, it is I make more money in private practice. So at the end of the day, my attitude is, you know what? This is I have the ability to put my money where my mouth is, and now take this position. I have the experience level in my life. I've represented human beings and have held their hands in really scary times for them. I've understood, you know, how my clients feel. I haven't, thank God, been in their skin, but I've seen what they go through. I've seen, as a prosecutor, what a victim's family that has lost a family member to violent crime, the tragedy of that whole scenario. I've represented victims of somebody else's negligence. I've been involved in some on behalf of some lawyers, on behalf of on some serious family law issues. I myself have been divorced. You know, and so those experiences,
Life experience and
are
professional
all
experience. Sure.
experiences that I have had that have shaped me and formed me as a human being, that have allowed me to grow. And I want to bring that to the bench. Not for any power. Could care less about the power. Outside of a courthouse, I would never expect anybody to call me anything but Lyann. And so, you know, I agree with you. I think that people have to look at what individuals' motivations are for running for judge when they make the important choice for who they're going to vote for.
Right.
Because it certainly isn't my motivation.
Another thing that I've noticed over my experience, you know, I was a prosecutor in Pinellas County from 2002 to 2005. When I left the state attorney's office, I right away opened up practice. I was in St. Pete originally, and I started doing family law. But over the course of my career since then, what I've noticed with new judges is a lot of times they take the bench with a mentality of, I'm the new sheriff in town and I'm going to fix this broken system. And a lot of times I see these grand ideas get implemented, and about 6 months later, it ends up kind of, the sea change flows back to kind of what, I guess I don't want to say it has always worked, but has worked in the absence of a better idea. Have you put in any thought to that? Do you know at this point what seat you would, where you would be?
No,
so you don't get to know.
No.
Okay.
And so what happens is as you know, you run to be a judge, not I want to be a judge in this division. So wherever they would want to put me, I'd be more than happy to go.
But you're not replacing Espinosa's where he was.
No.
Okay.
And so if I'm fortunate enough to get elected, wherever they want to put me is where they want to go. I do have some ideas from being in the courtroom for a long time, both in state and federal court and in different aspects, and seeing how the different systems sometimes might have some better ways of handling things.
Mm-hmm.
But I am not, I guess, arrogant enough to think that somehow my opinions haven't been thought of by other judges that have had experience, that have become judges, and just decide, oh, well, we'll just do things the same way.
Right.
And so, to me, it's all about talking and learning. And so it would be about speaking to the other judges, monitoring, what's going on in courtrooms. If I got elected, I can tell you that I would spend time trying to talk, once they told me what division I was going to go into, trying to talk to kind of the attorneys that practice in those divisions about what they think, as well as the judges that have been there and the many judges I know now that are retired, about what they think and what the best ways to do things are.
Now, the bench, the it's a apolitical seat. Do
Right.
you think politics play into how a judge is? Have you seen that in your experience? I'm not going to ask you specifically, where you stand on certain things, but do you think that that plays much of a role?
Yeah, I think that some judges are pro one side or another, whether they're in civil or whether they're in, criminal and sometimes in family law. Some judges, have a pro mom or a pro dad perspective. Um, it's one of the reasons why, I try to tell voters when I'm out there and I'm talking to people and they'll ask me opinions like, what's your position on abortion?
Right.
And I'll tell them, I can't answer that question. And I see the look of frustration. And I
Right.
said, I get that's frustrating. I understand it's frustrating. I said, but let me explain to you. Let me explain to you why a person that's running for judge can't answer that question, because it doesn't matter what their position is. They've
Right.
got to follow the law.
Right.
And so whether they agree with the law or not, they're not there to make the law. If they want to change that law, they need to run for the Florida legislature.
Right. Right.
Or run for, try to be a congressman for the state of Florida or a senator or whatever. I said, so as a judge, you want somebody on there that's going to follow the law and not somebody that's coming in with a preconceived attitude and trying to push everything to whatever their preconceived notions are. And that's why we can't answer those questions. Most of the time when I sit and explain that to people, they go, okay, I get it, and you're absolutely right. And the best way I explain that is I was a prosecutor and I sought the death penalty. Okay? And I have somebody that's sitting on death row that myself and my trial partner prosecuted and sought the death penalty on.
Right.
Okay? As a defense attorney, I argue against the death penalty.
Right.
Okay? The fact of the matter is that when you're a judge, whether you like it or whether you don't like it, at the end of the day, when the law calls for it, you have got to impose the law. You've got to follow the law. And that's why we can't sit here and paint their opinion. But you and I both know that there are people on the bench that, constantly, you're never going to file a motion to suppress and win it in
Right.
front of that person.
Right.
Or that if you're representing a man on a case, forget it. Or if you're representing a woman on a case, forget it.
Right.
Or if you've got the plaintiff, forget it. Or if you've got the defense, I mean,
Yeah.
that shouldn't happen.
Sure. Well, so in family law, Chapter 61, 13 deals with the factors that the court's got to consider when making a determination as to time sharing. And where this comes up for me in my experience, there's two. One is the moral fitness of the parties, which is always interesting to me because a judge's perception of morally fit changes drastically. And there's been a number of judges on the bench who are very devout Christian, others who are atheists, agnostic, these sorts of things. And I always wonder, whose moral fitness are because
Yeah.
they don't explain that. And then another one that has come up a lot is kind of the evolution of how we look at marijuana use, because it used to be that evidence of this party using marijuana was the death knell for their case. But more and more as it becomes socially acceptable, I've heard Judge Tibble say, was this a problem during the marriage? Were you guys smoking during the marriage? Because if you were, I'm not going to get really upset about it now. But if it wasn't something that was going, so what was accepted during the marriage? Are you turning around and pointing fingers now? But those are two things where, not necessarily politically, but I can definitely see kind of a broad perspective from who's on the bench on those issues.
Right, and I think one of the things that would be important to me to do is to constantly be trying to check myself on, what am I bringing in here?
Sure.
And to try to, as much as possible, make sure that I'm not letting any of my own personal judgments on particular issues cloud me in any way, because I really do think you've got to be a fair listener to the lawyers. You've got to be a fair reader of their memos. You've got to fairly listen to the testimony. And I I just think that you've got to constantly keep yourself in check and do a reassessment and make sure that you're keeping track with that and doing what you're supposed to do.
So, aside from your professional work, I know you're involved somehow in Friends of Joshua House because I saw you at that event. Any other charitable things that you do? Or
I've been one of those that I am, I call myself a check writer. And so for years, I'll donate to this, I'll donate to that. I've been heavily involved. I was heavily involved with my son when he was growing up, with all his sporting stuff and all. He had some learning disabilities, so all the school situations and all of that. I'm heavily involved with my grandchildren. I myself and my partner are fanatical about the environment, so we pick up trash, but I don't do it as part of any particular organization.
right,
I would go to a kid's place and participate in some of the stuff with my friend Tracy
right.
Sheehan, and things like that. But as far as am I like specifically on the board of any charitable board, no, I am somebody that has spent the bulk of my working day really, really obsessively working on my cases.
Working in the courtroom, and I think
and
that's
then I leave there and I'm involved with my grandchildren, one who's 13 and the other one that's 11, and all of those things. And I'll do the stuff that I can when I can. I'm actually hoping that if I do get elected, to the extent that it can, that actually frees up
an ability
some time to actually go out and like physically be part of different organizations, because you don't have the intensity of a client that's looking at a tremendous loss of liberty or their life.
right. I had Bruce Denson. Do you know Bruce Denson?
I don't think
He's
so.
a defense attorney over in Pinellas County. He was a prosecutor over there. He was here yesterday, and he set up this really cool not-for-profit called Paddle Addicts, where he's really into paddle boarding. So he takes people who are in drug court and people who are trying to get clean, and he takes them on paddleboard trips. And he's got this whole kind of Zen, it's balance in your life, and you've got to put the oar in the water to move yourself forward, and sometimes you fall off the board and you get back on. And I thought it was so cool the way
that
he
is
could
very cool.
mix a passion of his with helping people. And it's something, I think my experience has been similar to yours, is that I'm so busy here working, and I feel bad about it, but I've been pretty open on the show that I'm a big believer in therapy. I go to a therapist every week, and it's something I've talked to my therapist about. She said, well, you've given your wife an opportunity to do a lot of the charity for your family, because my wife has done stuff with Metropolitan Ministries.
Right.
She's actually on the board and throwing the big luncheon this year for Friends of Joshua House. And so as a family unit, we get to do it, but it's like you said, it's very hard when you're representing these people trying to do it for them. So before we conclude, I want to give you an opportunity. I don't know if you have a website for your election or...
Yeah, I do. Actually, my website is LyannGoudieForJudge.com.
Okay.
And I've also got a Facebook judicial page, which is Lyann Goudie for Judge. I've also got an Instagram page. I always tell people, if you want to find out more about me, okay, you can go on any of these sites. You can give me a call on my cell, 813-727-8427. Obviously, I just finished saying I've got 2 pretty intense trials that are coming up, so I'm a very responsive person, but I'm going to be very, very focused on that. You can also Google me. I always tell people, if you can look at my website of my firm, and you're going to see what we have on our website, which is Goudie & Kahn, PA. You can go into the Tampa Bay Times archive, and if you put the correct spelling of my name in, you can pull all the cases that they've covered of mine.
Give me the spelling.
LYANNGOUDIE.
All right. My producer will be happy about that, because
Yeah.
it helps her label these shows.
Yeah, and so you can go for a variety of different things. They can ask you. They can ask people that have handled cases with me and talk to people about me. I'm devoted to my family like you are to yours. Both my siblings, my nephews and nieces, my great nephews and nieces, my spouse, my son, my grandchildren. I've been blessed with great friends. And I've loved what I've done for 31 years, want to take that passion, refocus it to not being an advocate for anything except for fairness, treating people respectfully, trying to fairly apply facts to the law, and give people a resolution that, that's fair. And that's why I'm running for judge.
Well, you've convinced me. So hopefully you run unopposed, but if not, that's a tough bar to clear. So thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you for having me.
It was a pleasure talking to you, and I wish you good luck.
Thank you. Have a great day.
All right, take care.